Hey, Ben, is that number the conference line or that's someone calling in? 662-232-2364.
Sorry, Kate, can you repeat that?
Yeah, is that 662-232-2364 the conference line? Or is that someone calling in?
Yes, that's correct.
It's the conference line. Ready. Like Lee's here. So guys, looks like we're working on Andy and Griffin will be on, although he's recusing from the first case as it's his property.
Kate,
Yeah.
is Griffin going to be the one speaking about his COA, or will it be Corey?
It'll be Corey.
Is he on the
Griffin is going to recuse. He's not here yet. No.
He's not here yet. Okay.
No.
Hey, Corey, was that you that just joined?
Yes, the hyperlink didn't work, so I'm just calling in. I don't really know how to make that thing happen.
Do you want me to forward you another link, Corey, so you can join by video?
If you can, that's great. I'm here. I just, for some reason, when I went to the thing, it says click this hyperlink to get there. There's nothing happening. So anyway, it could be me.
Okay, let me forward you the email that I sent the commissioners this morning, and it just worked.
So as you can see the memo with the link here, and so I went to the agenda, but the link didn't get me anywhere, so anyway.
Okay, I'm forwarding you an email right now that has the link.
Okay.
Okay, it just sent, so hopefully you'll get it. And it looks like Andy is coming on. Let me let him in. Hey, Ben, would you try admitting the people in the lobby? For some reason, it's not letting me do that.
I'm trying, Kate. It's doing the same thing to me. Hello?
problems with, I was just letting you know I'm by audio only. I'm having problems with, reading names for some reason.
Okay, thanks, Sandy. And is Griffin on?
Hi, one.
Okay. So looks like we have everyone here, Dorothy, if you want to get started. Okay. I pointed out a couple minutes ago, Griffin's recusing from the first case.
Okay. Thank you, Kate. Can everybody hear me? Yes? Okay.
Yes.
I miss seeing you all in person. I wish we could do this outside. But we will muddle through, and first we will look at the agenda, and could I have a motion to approve the agenda? Just raise your hand, say your name.
So moved.
Lee, motions that we approve the agenda. Do I hear a second?
Second.
I see a second from Stuart. Let's count that. Everybody in favor of approving the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
The agenda is approved, and then we will look at minutes from August, and thank you to Andy for leading the August meeting that was 9 minutes long. I'm sorry that I missed it. And do I have a motion that we approve the minutes from that meeting?
So moved, Amanda Heineman.
Amanda moved, and we have a second from Andy, I believe. So all in favor of approving minutes from August, say aye.
Aye.
Those minutes are approved. We have two things on our agenda today. The first one is about Harrison Yard, and the second one is a complimentary review for 208. And Griffin is not on the call, I don't believe, because he has to recuse himself. We understand from the staff report that this is just what we've already approved, but pared down a little bit. Corey, is there anything you want to say about Harrison Yard?
Can y'all hear me, Okay, good. The bathrooms were redesigned because the pandemic is now encouraging us to have individual bathrooms and not group bathrooms. There is a little change in that we're going to basically take the gravel parking lot and add about 7 inches of gravel to it and then put turf on top of it in some areas. But the idea is the same concept. It's just a little smaller. Should it be successful, then I expect that we would come back to add more.
Thank you, Corey. Are those bathrooms like plumbed into the ground, or are they hotty?
No, it's a permanent structure. The elevations and stuff, I think, were drawn. I don't know if they're part of your packet. To be honest with you, I didn't even look at the packet. So.
They are. I did look at the packet, and I did see that. I'm just not very good at realizing. Okay. I don't see anyone anymore. I don't know what happened. Do we have any questions from the commissioners of Corey? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can still hear you, but I think everybody just got kicked.
Okay, I can't see anyone. Are they still?
Corey, are you still there?
Oh yeah, I'm here. I'm here, and
I'm still here, Stuart.
I hear everyone in a cave.
I see Amanda and Dorothy, but I don't see anyone else.
I see no one.
I see no one either. Well, you know what? Oh, here you all come. Yay. Okay. Let's keep talking about Harrison Yard. Does anybody have any questions for Corey about the design, which is just the pared down thing that we previously approved?
Give me 1 second.
Hearing no questions, I'm going to ask if anyone has a motion.
Hey, Dorothy, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Ben.
So I just want to make sure, and sorry, I'm multitasking, trying to get multiple people in the room right now, but I just want to make sure that you, and Corey, I couldn't hear you all that well if you addressed, there is the potential for an appeal, or there is an appeal going before the Mayor and Board of Aldermen on Tuesday about the bathrooms and the quantity of bathrooms, and if that appeal is successful, then I think the plan that you have in front of you is exactly what you will see. If that appeal is not successful, then either additional bathrooms will be required, or there will just be a pared down version of the area for which that yard will actually encompass. Is that right, Corey?
Yes, there's a couple of competing notions here. One is that this is a building, and in fact, it's a yard. So what the city has used as an occupant load is based on the building code. Obviously, this is a big open area, not a building, and we have a larger area if you use the occupant load calculations for a restaurant, then the bathrooms are insufficient. I think the count was we used 11 bathrooms, which we think is excessive. So we're appealing to the Mayor and Board of Aldermen under the guise that the area that we're wanting to use and the bathrooms that we have shown are adequate. Kind of like the National Guard Armory down there, that big pavilion. Those bathrooms are not designed for 1,000 people or 500 people. They're designed to be more convenient than they are based on the building code. So that's the basis of the appeal. We'll see what happens. But in any case, a defense would just be getting closer to the bathrooms as a result.
Thank you, Corey. Anything else from staff? Commissioners, do I hear any questions, or does anybody want to make a motion?
Well, I have one question. So if the appeal is not successful, is this going to come back again with more restrooms, or the number of restrooms is set, you're going to pull back on the square footage of the area?
The latter.
Okay.
And Stuart, to that point, we do have a drawing of what that actually looks like. It's just a smaller space. So we do have that right now.
Ben, I'm back in if you guys want me to show that.
Kate, is this something that, according to whatever the aldermen decide, is this something that staff is going to make a ruling on, or do you need us to do it next month?
The idea was that you guys would discuss both plans today, and it wouldn't need to come back before the commission. He could sort of get a conditional approval to do either.
So describe what happens if we have to make the yard smaller. Where will it be smaller? What will it look like?
Let me just be clear about the general ask. There's a fence that's basically put in the middle of the current parking lot, and that's the area calculation that they're using to generate the 11 bathroom requirement. If the appeal is unsuccessful, that fence moves 30 feet. Exactly the same fence, it just slides over 30 feet, makes a smaller area. That's the entire difference between 11 bathrooms and 6 bathrooms is a fence moving 30 feet.
Okay, so maybe if anyone wants to make a motion, it should include that in the order that the aldermen say that 11 bathrooms are required, that it is okay to move that fence 30 feet. And does anybody want to look at the drawing of that? Kate, you said you have one?
Yes.
Are you putting it up?
I can if you guys would like me to. I'll do that now.
I think I can imagine what it would, it's in the front, so it would just be 30 feet in, correct?
Yeah, it doesn't substantially change the look of what he's approving.
It would move 30 feet to the west, is that right, Corey?
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Are you guys seeing that?
No.
No.
I think I've got it.
All right, I'll stop sharing my screen then, Ben. I don't know why it's not working.
Yeah, it's like your screen's frozen right now. Bear with me, y'all. I've almost got it up.
Okay.
All right. Share.
Corey, while he's doing that, just out of curiosity, are they saying you've got to calculate this at 5 square feet?
15 square feet per person. The social distancing component of this was pretty much a conversation about how many people can you actually fit in the area, and so they're using 15 square feet per person, which is what a restaurant load is, that's with tables and chairs. So yes, there'll be tables and chairs out there, but the actual count of people, especially considering the pandemic what it is now, but you know, again, it's just a matter of how many. Anyway, if you just think you had 500 people there and everybody had to go to the bathroom at the same time, they would be 10 deep. So it just seems like it's 11 bathrooms is overkill when you use a building code instead of basically I don't know, it's a yard.
Right.
You guys weren't able to see my screen, were you? I'm trying to show you.
We're hopeful that it's better.
Yeah, I would agree with you that 15, it seems to me that maybe 50 is more appropriate. You know, treat it more like an amphitheater lawn and do it at 50. 15 seems a little excessive.
Yeah, it's a very narrow interpretation, but it is an interpretation that we have to deal with.
Yeah.
Can y'all see that?
I made a line for the bathroom, but even I thought it looked like plenty of toilets.
Yeah, I could only imagine, you know, having a bank of 11 bathrooms out there and watching 75% of them just be empty all the time.
And just to be clear, you
we're
guys
not
don't see
seeing anything.
Thank you.
No, we don't see it, but I mean, I can go ahead and make a motion. I think that I'm going to motion to approve this COA request, and in the event that the appeal is unsuccessful and the fence has to shift 30 feet to the west, I still think that our approval would hold because it's no change to the structure itself.
Stuart has made a motion that includes what should happen if the aldermen don't like 6 toilets. And do we have any further discussion? Do I hear a second? Second. All in favor of the COA as Stuart amended it, say aye.
Aye.
Amanda says yes.
Aye.
Lee says yes. Stuart made the motion. I say yes. Andy? Andy, can you hear us? Okay, and Ben, do you have any evidence of Andy?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, good.
I'm here.
Okay. All right, okay, good.
That's a yes.
Okay, yes, so the COA passes. Thank you, Corey. Is Griffin going to join us now? Does anybody know?
Yes, Griffin is going to be joining for the complimentary review.
Oh, good, there you are. Hi, Griffin.
Hello.
We're excited about your
And
Harrison.
it looks like he just came in.
Yeah, I see him. Can you hear me, Griffin?
I can hear you.
Okay. Well, your COA for Griffin Yard passed, and we think it's a great idea for being outside right now. And we happen to think there are enough potties, but we'll see what the city says.
I hope so.
Okay, let's move on to our next, order of business. I don't know if you really call it a COA because it's a complimentary review, but we have been eagerly awaiting to hear something on the progress at 208, and we are grateful that you're showing us complimentary review. I think that's very helpful in the process of getting the building approved. Obviously, COVID has probably affected your delay, and I know you had some measurement problems also, and it also seems to have affected your usage, which kind of surprised me. So we would love to hear you on that. First of all, could we ask Kate, will you speak to this design? And staff has already made comments, which we have read, but would love to hear from you regarding this new design.
Yes, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, we're having some trouble with the ability to share our screens. So hopefully Ben and Chris are getting that worked out over in City Hall. I will say, you guys saw my comments. The design meets a lot of the requirements laid out in the Oxford Design Guidelines in terms of materials. You know, there are some traditional elements, but it is contemporary, so obviously we like that based on the guidelines. A couple of things to keep in mind. I ran the design test in engineering, and there are going to be some details to work out with that awning on the side facade, which I'm sure Corey will be able to talk to Rihanna about, and some concerns about the ADA access, with, I believe they're going to be rebuilding that ramp out front. But overall, staff does think that the design, the tenets of the design guidelines.
Okay, thank you, Kate. I think that next we could hear from Corey. If you will describe it for us, Corey, and give us your thoughts about putting this together. And when you do so, would you please discuss usage, because I think that does affect the way we look at it.
Sure. It has been several months of a few different things. One is that trying to kind of capture the spirit of traditional Oxford. As much as I would, like to do a glass box, we don't think that would be really appropriate here. So the idea is to generate some traditional elements in terms of scale and massing, and then have more contemporary elements to sort of denote what it is in time and space. I mean, that's generally where we are. There are some details to be worked out, but what we're looking at is, and I don't know what you've seen. I try to give you all the information that I have to date, which is plan options, elevation options, sections, and some numbers that show sort of why the sunshade is the depth that it is. And the idea is to have something that's warm and inviting as you approach the square. We feel like that this sort of gives it that feel. The speaking to usage, obviously the ground floor will be commercial, and we have the upper floor as residential, which was what we discussed earlier. The second floor has become a little bit of an issue because originally 208 had a stair and bathrooms in the alley. If you recall that, the bathrooms for that building and the stair, when you move those functions, handicap accessible bathrooms and stairs inside the building, as well as beneath an elevator, it really cramps the square footage. So we have such a small amount of square footage that's actually, technically usable. And so the number of tables and chairs you get in the second floor and the first floor combined may not yield if you will, enough business to justify it. So that's where the second floor is sort of in limbo. We've designed the structural system so that the addition of a stair along that north side would be the only thing that would be required, and then an adjustment to that 4-foot section that separates Square Books from the new building. We tried to make as minimal an impact as possible, regardless of the use, whether it be now or 20 years from now or 30 years from now, 50 years from now. The building is designed to be, a permanent fixture in the architecture of Oxford. So that's the attempt that we're making. We've worked long and hard to try and make sure we have everything as straightforward and simple as possible. And I'm happy to answer any questions. I don't really know without having some graphics to point to, which is the beauty of having a public hearing and not a virtual public hearing. But I don't know where to go from there other than answering questions.
Okay, thank you, Corey. I don't think I have anything to say that would require you pointing to anything, but I'll say a few things, and I would love to hear from each commissioner, because I know you're here for feedback so that you can streamline this process and have an approved building. So,
Hey, Dorothy?
not specifically looking at this, yes?
Dorothy, can y'all see it now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. We can see the exterior of it. On my screen, it's showing as one of the little squares. So is it not necessarily going to be a restaurant?
I don't know. I don't know. We've got the floor plans that you see. I don't know that it's been marketed yet, to be honest with you. We've been trying to figure out how to get a structure that could be either or, not just now, but for the future. So we haven't. I don't know of any detailed marketing plan. I know that when John was having an interest and we started looking at the square footages, you start looking at how small was left over. It changes the dynamic of that. So it will be a commercial use on the first floor. The second floor is, if it were to be a bar supporting a restaurant, there's potential for that. There's potential for office space. I don't know if we don't have any real office space available around here anymore. So it could be office space on the second floor, not necessarily a restaurant.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Corey. Yeah, that changes just, at least for me, how I think about it, because I know we were imagining those balconies as necessary for tables, for restaurant and bar, for sitting at and having drinks. So that does, in my mind, it just gives me a different way to look at the building. And as Kate said, she went through in her notes height, massing, rhythm, etc., all the things, all the components we're supposed to look at to make sure that it fits in square. But I wanted to talk more generally. The thing that it's in the introduction in our guidelines says that a new building is to preserve, strengthen, and maintain the integrity of the district, of the square, to respect and enhance the visual character, and to be compatible but not duplicating of a structure that was there or the structures that are next to it. And I do see Kate's points in that all the materials are appropriate, et cetera, et cetera. I just was a little surprised when I saw the design, because I had heard maybe it would be a little bit out of the box, a little bit a nod maybe to what was there, or a nod to Square Books next to it without duplicating. And I even heard a rumor of a rounded corner, which I thought would be really cool, because it is so visible from both facades are so visible as you approach it. Maybe a nod to the parapet wall that was there, or the brick, the pretty brick detail, or even the crazy octagonal windows from the 40s. And so those are my only comments that I thought, oh, that's not exactly what I expected. It's a nice looking building, but I guess we have to ask ourselves, is it enhancing, I believe was one of the words, or strengthening the integrity of the square? And I would like to hear from any other commissioner who has comments about your impressions or what you might want changed about it.
Dorothy, if I might, is Tim Smith in the meeting? And he may have some. Tim, are you on?
I am. And
Since he's the owner, I'd like for him to kind of address, if you don't mind, to kind of see where he's coming from.
yeah, thank you, Corey and commissioners for taking the time for this complimentary review today. I would, and going back to the usage, I think that we're in a much different place, stating the obvious here, than we were, 6 months ago. So our desire is that a restaurant ultimately is there. So, but we're, Corey's been tasked with the tough duty of trying to design something that could be flexible as we go through the process. Because it's just a time right now, especially restaurants, even having to go to not be able to utilize all their square footage, and then we already have a smaller footprint. It just brings some challenges. So, but that's what we ultimately hope happens. But we're trying to move this forward and not wait, until we're past COVID and where we are now. We're trying to be proactive and get out, even though we're probably still a little slower than what we had hoped. From a design standpoint, we went back and forth to your point about, we had some other designs that were probably more, as Corey said, in a glass house. I would say they were much more probably contemporary in my limited architectural vocabulary. That would be probably the way I would describe them. So we tried to get some feedback and tried to be what we thought what would be square appropriate, and then but also give some contemporary look as well. So this is kind of where we landed, and I hoped that we had struck a good middle of the road, but welcome your comments.
Thank you, Tim. Other commissioners?
I agree with you, Dorothy, about a lot of that. I feel like it just isn't quite right. I feel like it looks more like an addition. A lot of right angles for me. When you mentioned the curbside, I've heard a rumor about that too, and I thought that was very appealing. I appreciate that it does meet all the guidelines, however.
Thank you, Amanda. Who else?
I'll jump in. I try and, sort of put subjectivity on likes and dislikes of design aside, and stick to the bullet points we are to judge things by, and sort of check those off as I go. When I go down our list, looking at both the Oxford guidelines and even back to the Secretary of Interior's guidelines, this kind of checks it all off for me until I get down to roof shape and details and ornamentation. So I don't mind the cantilever. I mean, I think that it's the cantilever covering the second floor balcony. It's a more contemporary way to treat what you see elsewhere on the square, which is columns, extending on up to support the balcony and then above to support the roof. This is a more contemporary treatment to get that roof up there. And to me, it's interesting. It's 2020. It achieves the same goal of getting a roof over that balcony, but treats it differently. For me, when I get to the roof shape on the upper floor, that's where, I look at that and I look everywhere else and say that on the upper floor, if it is to sort of work with the design or what you see elsewhere on the square, to me, that's very antithetical to what you see. I mean, that should be, I feel, should be more of a simpler parapet up there, so that the building finishes in a similar style to every other building on the square. It doesn't need to be the same ornamentation. It doesn't need to look like anything else. It's just, I just feel like it as a roof shape, that's very, very different. And when you look at the guidelines that we are to judge this by, it talks very specifically about roof shapes and how a building finishes at the top should work with what you with the predominant condition that it's trying to fit into. And then on the next one down, details and ornamentation, I consider light sconces an ornamentation, and certainly in the image that we're looking at there, it very much is an ornamentation. And it's a very, very contemporary treatment. These up-down sconces that are going to wall wash and kind of create that V of light. But it definitely jumps out as an ornamentation that I think is present nowhere else on the square. And to me is a little too, it's a little too much and a little overstated. So that would be a box I would also sort of flag as that, to me, is not quite checking off of fitting within the historic guidelines on ornamentation. Otherwise, I think that it checks everything off. I mean, I think at a detail level, I might nitpick. Like, I think that the little stair tower element that you have at the north end, if that could maybe be treated a little more as a hyphen, set back a little bit, so that you it's not in plane with yours, with the new structure or with square books. That might be a nice treatment, but that's just an opinion on aesthetic. And then finally, the way the parapet of square books kind of has that spaghetti western effect and doesn't return back to the new structure. I know that's your neighbor, not you, but that condition was created when 208 was torn down. I would like to see that parapet of square books, if it's possible, return back and kind of close that gap off, so you don't get that, that, I call it the spaghetti western effect, the billboard of that parapet up there. Kind of close that off, because you're really going to see that coming up South Lamar. And I don't know if that's brick. I don't know what the material is. That's, I'll leave that to you all to determine that. But I think that should be closed off in some manner. And that's it. I think that's all my comments.
Thank you, Stuart. I missed a little bit of that just from coming in, going in and out. Corey, did you get all of that? And Tim, did you get all of that about the roof, about the details and ornamentation, and about the stair being more of a hyphen to delineate more that it's a new addition or a new addition to the square?
I will speak to a few. Generally around the square, the buildings are lit by those light poles you see out there in front of square books. And so it basically just illuminates the air and the ground and basically a sphere of light. We're trying to avoid having that kind of glare and blaring light. And so that's the reason why you see the sconces. The idea is to illuminate the sunshade from below, so it would be basically a stained wood color to give it a little more warm and inviting feel. You don't get a lot of that around the square at night. You just get big, high intensity discharge of lamps. So that's the reason we're not showing light poles in front of the buildings. We don't think we want them, but that speaks to some of the lighting and ornamentation. The general concept of the upper floor is to be carved away from a 3-story building. So the idea is that the building would be 3 floors, and that you would carve away the upper floor and change material, and that's the general concept behind changing material from brick to stucco. The stair, the elevator tower, and again, the property is just so so small, it just square footage needs, just basically. I don't know, obviously the lighting can certainly be adjusted or, we haven't gotten into lighting design. This is a concept, obviously. And whether the lights are individual, whether it's linear, but we just haven't gotten that far.
Corey, how does the height compare to square books?
The elevation that we have is shown on A20. Ben, can y'all pull that up? I think that the sunshade on the upper floor, if we were to pitch the roof or to create a parapet, would obviously add a little height to it. But the other thing, it wouldn't provide any shade from the sun. So that's the idea of having that same cantilever on that upper floor, to sort of mimic and mirror the second floor, even though it's back in space. There you go. Right.
Yeah, I'm interested also in, of course, visually, how much taller is it? Literally, how much taller, and also visually. I know your third floor is stepped back a good bit, but it's just hard for me.
The design of the building the roof is 18 inches taller than the parapet wall of Square Bucks. It is a little shorter than the front parapet wall of Square Bucks, and the drawing that I presented, which was A2.1, kind of shows the whole elevation. That one. Now you see the parapet wall at the front, and you see the Square Bucks parapet wall, and you see the height of our building. So that tells you exactly, and the dimensions are there too. So from the floor ceiling assembly is not designed yet, but it's noted as what it's intended to be, and then the ceiling heights themselves. I think we're at 35 feet finished floor. From finished floor, we're at 35 feet to the top of the roof. I'm not certainly opposed to putting a parapet wall. I don't know with the cantilever how much it would be seen. Obviously, down by Bancorp South, it would be seen. I think that's a comment that's fair. I don't know that it's architecturally significant one way or another.
Well, I think Square Books is not the only thing we need to look at for height. You've got a row of one-story buildings coming up from the south. So everything is one story until we get to you, which is 3-story. And I know you commented at a previous meeting that one day everything in that row would be 1 story, like where Landry's and Cat Daddy's are. But I hope that's not true. What do I hear from other commissioners?
Can you hear me?
Yes, Lee, go ahead.
I would like to just say I cannot imagine building a building during COVID time. I can't imagine the struggle that you've had to get it going. And the future of knowing what a restaurant would be, I understand, is a gamble. However, it has always been a restaurant there, and I guess I, too, thought that you would have another restaurant, and it would be a slight modification of what was there before. It looks really massive, and I'm looking at my phone right now, and it's not easy to do from remote, but it just seems very, very large, and it seems very angular and a little bit too modern to me. I agree about the roof. I agree about the angles, and I'm not too enthused with it, to be honest. It seems just a little stark. And again, like Dorothy just said, the surrounding areas are one level, and then all of a sudden there's this huge building. I would like for you to address the glass stairs that you were talking about, whether you might have them or whether you might not.
Can we go to the other renderings? Because I know we're focused on this nighttime view, which is probably the most dramatic. Obviously that's the more dramatic of the views. But I think other renderings will give you a in that rendering, sort of the section between square books and our building. And I think that the other image that we were looking at is what was giving this, it's designed to be more massive, but this will give you an idea of the scale of the building. I think it's more.
I can't see, it's not being shared on my screen. Is that anything you can do, Kate or Ben? If not, I've got it on my phone. I was just wondering.
Well, I think it's being shared in the document camera. I think it's being shared in the document camera, so you may have to swipe over, I think, to pull up Chris Simmons' camera and be able to see it in there. And if you touch it inside that square, I think you can pin it and it'll make it full screen. We seem to be having some technical difficulties today.
Okay.
But to address Lee's, concern directly, this rendering shows the height of the building relative to square books. The other view is obviously designed to be a more dramatic image, but this gives you a better idea of the people standing on the roof of the third floor relative to the parapet wall that is square books. So the massiveness of the building is certainly smaller than square books. So anyway, and we can certainly back the camera up and get back towards the courthouse and take a picture and insert the building from there. It'll be a lot easier to sort of see the mass of square books versus the mass of this building. I tried to sort of generally show that on the A2.1 sheet that was in the packet because it shows the whole block relative, because I know that the first image is just designed to look more dramatic.
And could you talk about the glass staircase that you talked about and that you might have it or you might not?
Yes, the way the two schemes are designed is that 4-foot section of window wall you see between square books and the new building. That window wall stays the same, whether there's a door at the bottom or it's just more glass. Okay. So what would happen is we would end up just increasing the window down to the same height that's shown in the elevation of the sill line of the windows. So nothing about the building design would change, regardless of the second floor use. That was
Thank you.
Would there be, Corey, on that stair, would there be an opportunity for an internal connection without having having to access it from the sidewalk? It's kind of neither here nor there, just a curiosity.
The floor plans show the stair locations, having to have them remote, with one on one end and one on the other, just from a planning standpoint, and being able to get to the ground. I mean, that's the other side of the equation. Just trying to get to an exit. As you have a bar, we have to have two ways out, and the elevator can serve as one with a generator backup. So,
right, but I guess what I'm asking is that stair at the north end. Would there ever be an opportunity if someone, like, let's say, Boo Ray wanted to come in and say we're taking both floors, to have that stair be an internal connection and still meet your egress requirements, like through a lobby or something like that?
Yes, the bottom of the stair was the chance to have a door connecting straight to the restaurant, so that you would just open the door up and use that as an internal stair. You wouldn't need the door to the exterior if it was all one. I know we were talking to John earlier, having that flexibility of cutting off the restaurant at 10 and having that be the exit was an attractive feature. So it could be internal or it could be used as an external exit without having the restaurant beholding to people going in and out of the bar. Kind of like City Grocery is now. So Lee, does that help you with the proportion?
It does. I just wish we were all together.
Yeah.
I agree with you, Lee. This is very difficult to communicate things over Zoom, but I guess that is where we are. Griffin, tell us your impressions and any questions.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I like the overall design of it. I do think it feels a little separated with the cantilever roof and the balcony. I like the curved idea that you mentioned. Hold on, my phone just lost it. When I'm looking at it from the front, the third floor, going down Harrison Avenue seems to stick out on the roof side a little bit. That doesn't stay within the rest of the building. That may just be the view, the angle view versus if it actually does. But, I think from the first floor up, all that is completely fine. I get what you're saying about the light poles, Corey, and the lighting coming down. It is completely different than a lot of the square, but I don't personally know that I do actually like the design of it. I would like it to be a little softer and not quite as edgy, but I think it's pretty good.
Thank you, Griffin. Andy, can you hear us?
Dorothy, I agree with Griffin on the fact that I think it's completely fine. It's completely fine, but I would like to see something more than fine. That's just an opinion.
Okay. Thank you, Amanda. Completely fine, but we're looking for more than fine. Okay. Andy, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes. Great. Andy, tell us your comments and questions, please.
Mine don't veer much different than Lee, as well as Stewart. I was really looking for a more tailored look, similar to what we had behind the Thompson House, where there seemed to be a nice marriage of a very old building into something that's a little bit more modernistic, but not quite as far as I believe has used the words very angular in this building. It is that to me. But I'm not a contemporary person, and I admit that freely. But I think it can be softened a lot. And I think the devil is going to be in the detail of the awnings, fixtures, the brick in particular. But those are my only thoughts outside of what's already been said.
Okay. Thank you, Andy. Do I have other commissioner comments, thoughts? If not, Corey, I have one tiny thing, and that is I see you've got dryers on the exterior walls. Are those vents going to be hidden by these awnings?
I'm sorry, do what now?
So you've got dryers on the second floor and the third floor, and I don't think we want to see dryer vents as we drive up Lamar. Are those going to be hidden by the awning?
I don't know. I would expect they go to the roof, truth be told, but I don't know.
Okay, well, that's just something that I thought that would be unsightly. But in general, Corey, could you tell us just sort of the feel of the building and why it might belong on the square, and also why it might not belong in some other commercial area, like anywhere else in Oxford, the Commons, or wherever you want to imagine. How in your mind does it belong on the square, and does it enhance the historic character of the square?
Well, I would say that, as I mentioned early on, that trying to capture the spirit of traditional Oxford, is sort of where we were going. Obviously more contemporary, which, I would say larger sheets of glass, and less traditional looking windows and doors. Certainly, not real sure that I'm following the angular component of it, other than that nighttime rendering, which again is designed to be more dramatic. But the rendering we're looking at, I'm not sure. It's really a series of vertical and horizontal planes. I mean, the awnings, instead of being, I would say, traditional canvas or metal awnings, are shown as cantilevered, just as a reference to the 21st century. Obviously, if we had a sunshade that had a slope in it, and it were canvas, it would certainly soften that. And if that's where the angular part is coming from, is that from that, I'm going to call it the dramatic nighttime view, then I certainly see the angular there, but I don't see it when we're looking at the other rendering. It seems to be pretty straightforward. It's a vertical wall that has a horizontal plane, and we've got, cantilever balconies and cantilever things around the square, so I don't know that it's that foreign. Obviously, most of the buildings around here are parapet wall buildings, which, obviously we could do something here. It's just, I don't know that it would be, I don't know if copying that methodology of building design is architecturally significant one way or another. But so I think there's does it belong? I think Amanda sort of said it best. It's just fine. It looks like it fits in Oxford. That's what we're doing. It doesn't look like it's foreign. I don't think it is.
Corey, I want you to be able to get what feedback you need. I'm wondering, it doesn't sound exactly like, to me, that this committee would approve it as drawn. So I want this to be progress, this meeting. And can anybody explain any more what they might need to see changed? And Stuart, maybe if you understood what commissioners are saying who are not architects, if you could help explain what changes you think might make this more palatable to this committee, I think that might be helpful for Corey to move forward.
Well, it's kind of hard for me to, I think, speak for others. I think I'm guessing maybe the angular, the using the word angular, I'm guessing that it is about the cantilevered. If you just kind of imagine that the cantilevered roof elements are gone, I think that people would probably say that it immediately softens it. I don't necessarily think that it's an issue. I think it's interesting until you get to the top floor, like I said. But I think that probably is part of that, angular comment. But I can say for me, my sticking points would be the cantilevered roof at the top level. That for me is it's a major element. It'll be very visible coming up South Lamar, and I would have a real hard time with that one. And then again, I go back to the lights. I think that the lights are very dramatic, very overstated, and very different from anything else on the square. The square is kind of understated because it is a historical, kind of bubble, and it is lit by ambient light on the streets, and the buildings around do not have that, dramatic uplight effect. So to me, that's another sticking point of mine. I'll have a hard time speaking, I think, for everyone else. I get what you're asking, Dorothy, but it'd be kind of hard for me to infer from everyone else.
Yeah, I think it's probably, it's hard to express as a person who doesn't, I'm hearing words like, I'd like for it to be softer, and more tailored. And I'm just trying to make sure that Corey understands what commissioners are objecting to, and that it looks too angular and too massive. Corey, do you have any questions of us that would help you move forward with this?
Corey might be frozen, it looks like.
He looks frozen. Kate, do you have any, just listening to commissioner feedback, is there anything that you can say to sum up? I know it's hard when you've got lots of different people's opinions, but I am hearing some common things.
Sure. I think Stuart was right on the mark about the third floor cantilever balcony. I wondered how you guys would react to that. It does seem, particularly with that third floor being set back, you kind of wonder about the necessity of having that go out so far. You know, I think it's successful on the lower floors as a contemporary element, but I can understand if you guys would want that removed. I'm wondering if any commissioners share concerns about the point you made, Dorothy, about is a balcony necessary on a residential second story? Because I'm picturing a residential use on that second floor, and, you know, people are leaving a couch and, you know, furniture out there in a way that wouldn't happen with a restaurant. I'm wondering if any other commissioners share that concern.
I definitely share that concern, and I think that in our discussion, when it was just in the early phases, when we thought we were keeping 208 and we just wanted to see if we could allow a balcony, I know that our discussion included it is necessary for economic development to be okay with a balcony that we might not otherwise approve, because part of our charge, I think like 4 of the 11 reasons that we exist, have to do with economic growth and vitality of the historic district, because it would be useless if all the buildings were unoccupied. And that's how we got to approving a balcony out there, because that really attracts people in Oxford to come and eat and drink outside on a balcony, and it makes a restaurant successful. I think it can probably make or break it, and we're looking at a very different situation here if it is office space or a retail space.
Yeah, so we'll make sure that gets communicated to Corey. I'm not sure he's in the meeting at the moment, but
Well, this is Tim. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Let me be clear. Our goal is still for this to be a restaurant. The option of, in a very different time, it was never on our even radar for this to be anything but a restaurant for 2 floors. I think that anyone that's in the restaurant business probably knows that it's not an option for just a single floor because of the limited space for it to be a restaurant. So that's our goal, is for the top 2 floors to do so. But I'm trying to move this thing along so we're not waiting on COVID to get passed and know if it's going to be a viable business option or not. But we just tried to come to you and show you, hey, our fallback in worst case scenario, this could happen. But it is still our desire for this to be the restaurant. I think that's how our desire to proceed with this is going to. That's how we're going to market. We have marketed the property, and we'll continue to in that regard.
Okay, so you're still hoping for it to be a restaurant. It's just that you don't necessarily have John Currents as your intended tenant anymore.
Well, look, John, still talking. It's a different time for everyone right now, and whether it's John or someone else, that's our goal, is for this to be a restaurant.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Tim. Of course, we'll get this, and this meeting is being recorded so that Corey can hear the comments later. But do other commissioners have anything else to say about design and what might make this building more palatable to you?
I want to jump in real fast on the balcony. I think balconies on buildings on the square. I don't know the whole history. I know that it's been a big debate raging for a long time. But a use. First of all, I'm not sure that we really can make decisions based on use, but maybe Ben and others can comment on that. But regardless of what the use is, I mean, I think speaking to economic vitality, a balcony is almost kind of becoming a necessity or a strong desire, whether it's office space, residential, or a restaurant. I think that, having a balcony is definitely going to make a space more marketable, no matter what the use is. But I understand from a historic perspective, it's kind of a different thing we have to think about because, not all buildings historically had balconies, and so we have to consider that. But I don't personally have an issue with the balcony, but I would be interested for someone to comment on whether we really should be considering use and occupancy type of the buildings in our deliberations.
Ben or Kate?
Ben, can you talk about that, how use factors into decisions? I mean, it's always been my understanding that even though there is that portion of the ordinance that discusses economic vitality in our historic districts, but other than that, use is not considered as much as design.
Stuart, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm trying to work on the technical side here, trying to get Corey into the meeting and work with our IT staff. So I apologize. I didn't catch the question. So I'd appreciate it if you could repeat it. I'm sorry.
I'm curious, or I'd like to be educated on how much use of a structure should be a part of our deliberations, and in this case, it has to do with, the balcony. It seems that some feel a balcony, if it were a restaurant, would be appropriate. A balcony, if it were residential, would not be appropriate. And how should we think about that in terms of, what we, I guess, are allowed to consider or should consider when it comes to a use of the building?
I mean, I think from your perspective, you have to consider the architectural elements that are being proposed within the uses. At the end of the day, a proposal is entitled to the full uses that are allowed within the zoning district, and so regardless of it being a restaurant or residential, I mean, I think that those are elements that are well within an applicant's right to propose. And is something that would, at the end, be considered by, by the Planning Commission if it is required to consider that from a, any special exceptions, special uses, things like that. But, I think, again, a development proposal is within its grounds to, to propose the whole breadth of uses that are afforded within the zoning code, and as such, I think this commission is tasked with evaluating any and all of those elements that that are proposed within it, the balconies, the unenclosed rooftops, etc. Does that help you, Stuart?
Yeah, it does. I mean, what I hear you saying is in the case of a balcony or anything else, judge it based on, it could be anything allowed by the zoning ordinance. Don't judge it based on what it is today or might be tomorrow.
Right.
I hear you. We had a lot of discussion about what would be going on the balcony, and balconies in general on the square. But of course, yeah, we can't see into the future and shouldn't be saying what the building is going to be used for. But it does make a difference just as you're thinking about the building that's being built as to what's going on there. And I will, Kate's comment about there's a couch out there because some students live in the apartment. That's something that I would think we would want to consider.
I would add though that, we definitely considered the balconies at Harrison Square condominiums and I like looking at that architecture and that energy that it does bring, especially on a double-decker football weekend, whether it's a restaurant or, Trustmark Bank using their space for their customers, and especially for Tim to market that. I think it needs to meet all the criteria, but I think it will help him market that space, and if it's appropriate, even on the third floor, or I like it. I think it has to be tastefully done and correctly done. But if we approved it for their original rendering, more so for restaurant, I still think as a law firm, if I was going to lease that space and I had that for those pivotal weekends that come to Oxford, that helps him economically to lease the space out or sell it or whatever his plan is. So that is something to consider.
Thank you, Griffin. Yeah, fun can be had on a balcony for sure.
And just so you know, I've got Corey. He's now here by speakerphone. That's about as best as I can get right now. So I've got him on my cell phone. He's nearby, so he's listening. One other item I do want to point out, and I think Kate mentioned it early on in her report, is back to my my previous comment, Stuart's previous question. This design is predicated upon the Mayor and Board of Aldermen granting some revocable license, because this design actually utilizes city property with the the awnings, with the balcony. When you turn the street over on, I think that's Tyler. There are awnings that protrude. There are concerns already. I think Kate expressed that in her report. Concerns about those elements. So the Mayor and Board of Aldermen will ultimately have to grant a revocable license to be able to use that right of way. No different than has been done in other areas of the square, but that has to be done for this design to actually be constructed as proposed.
Okay, thanks, Ben. But it won't change how we treat it next month or the next or whenever we end up voting on it, will it?
No, but also be aware that if those revocable licenses are not granted, then they may have to come back before the commission for consideration for an alternative design, whatever.
Okay, what's the order of things? Who goes first? A revocable license or historic?
I think historic, Dorothy. Okay. I think it's considered here first.
Okay.
The overall big picture design is going to be approved. It's going to require a site plan approval from the Planning Commission. It will require a revocable license to be granted, and then from there, they may have to, if it's granted, if some of those are granted, then great. If not, then they'll have to come back and they'll have probably an amended COA of some kind.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Final thoughts from anybody? Corey, can Corey hear us?
Hello, I'm sorry, do what now?
Ben, will you see if Corey has any questions before we adjourn?
Corey, do you have any questions of the commission?
I guess the first question I would have is if this traditional building is not sort of something that you would support, what type of traditional building would you be more inclined to support? I don't know. I don't know how else to describe that. Harrison Square, which is a block away, is a traditional building, and it's 3.5 or 4 stories tall, however tall it is, but it's traditionally proportioned. It's got traditional windows and doors, and it's metal canopies. So I'm curious as to what if this doesn't fit, what would?
I'd like to jump in. I don't think that the scale or height or massing is, for me, is a problem. I think that, I think the angles of some of these renderings, definitely, the looking up at it doesn't help the case. I think that some rendering showing us, you know, a little higher up so we can put it more in context of scale. I think it really is, I'm looking on street view here down South Lamar at the old 208. I don't think it's any bigger or more massive than 208 with its pitched roof. So I'm not sure that the size, scale, height is really that big of an issue. Maybe some renderings with alternate angles might help show that to us. And that's all I'll comment on. I didn't really particularly have an issue with the aesthetic of it, other than the things, you know, at a detail level that I touched on that I didn't feel were checking off the boxes. And I'll let others speak.
Any other commissioners?
This is Andy. This is Andy. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I do want to speak to the word angular and the hard lines of what I consider to be the building, and to address Corey's question. I'm looking from the south north at the nighttime particular view, and I see 6 right angles coming up south to north, including the corner of the building, the corner of the balcony, and the rest of the roof lines. Nowhere else in the square do you see that type of right angle effect. To me, that's what is a problem with the building. That's just me. That, I think, would be a beginning. That's all I got.
Okay. Thank you, Andy. Corey, I don't know how to best describe what I'm saying when I said it's not what I expected. This looks a whole lot like what you had already proposed as a addition to existing 208. So, except for the cantilever. I think all I can do is say again, I thought that it would have some sort of a nod to either a building next to it, like Square Books, or the building that it is replacing, maybe something playful or out of the box is all I was thinking. And I don't have an objection to it, really. I just don't know why it should be on the square, but I guess I don't really know why it shouldn't either. So I'm sorry that I'm not able to express in a helpful way what I mean, but hopefully you can interpret that. Anybody else have comments on Corey's question, which was, if you don't like this, what would you like? Okay, I'm not hearing anything. Corey, do you feel like you know how to proceed?
For somehow leaving the meeting. I don't have any idea how I did that. It just kind of left me.
I'm not hearing anything else, Dorothy.
Okay. All right. So I think we're finished discussing this, and unless you hear something else from Corey, do we have a motion to adjourn, knowing that this is not the most efficient or effective way to communicate, but it's the only way we've got right now?
Yeah.
Do I hear?
I apologize for all the technical difficulties that we're having here.
Well, you cannot apologize for COVID. It is not your fault. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn, Griffin.
Griffin made a motion. Let's call Stewart's raised hand a second. All in favor? Aye. First, if we have, I'm sorry, I forgot to ask you, Kate, did you have any staff, anything we needed to discuss before we adjourn?
I'd just like to say thanks to everyone who is attending the MDAH training. I appreciate it that we can remain a CLG and eligible for funding, and I hope you guys have learned some things. And that's it.
Thank you, Kate. Yeah, I listened to one that was very helpful, and it was very appropriate to what we've been discussing today. No, I listened to two.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, and I think we have already voted on adjourning. So, thank you all. Good to see you in Little Squares. Bye.
Bye.